Hi, I'm Chris, and this is Business Over Brews, and I'm excited to be bringing Lauren back in for a part 2 from our first episode, and we're going to focus on today finding work in the middle of a pandemic. Just like myself, Lauren and I had found ourselves looking for new work in the middle of a pandemic. It's a very scary time, so Lauren's going to share her advice and her insights of how she found her leadership role in the midst of a pandemic. Hello and welcome back to our second part of Business Over Brews here with Lauren Mead, VP of Marketing at HQO. Lauren is a marketing thought leader. You've been an executive for, got to be 4, 5, 6 years now you've been working in a leadership role in marketing, if not longer. And one thing that the two of us have had in common as we looked into the pandemic, as the pandemic started, we found ourselves looking for work. Personally, I got let go, as I've said in my other videos, April 1st of all days, April Fool's Day. Hey, by the way, you're out of a job. And it was just an absolute shock. And so, Lauren, being a marketing executive, being a marketing leader, you find out you're out of a job. What's the first thing you do? It's a tough market as it is already. You're in a very competitive and coveted role. What's the first thing that pops through your head? What do you do day one?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a fun place to be, right? I think I had the privilege, I think I had a little bit of a foresight going into it, right? So my transition out of time trade, the company was acquired. We were acquired right as everyone was transitioning into remote work. So it was a bit of a cluster of a whole bunch of things going on. I think as an executive in a technology company, when a company is acquired, especially as private equity, your job is on the line and there's probably going to be changes being made. So I can't say it came as a complete shock to me. At the same time, it's it never feels good to leave something that if you poured your heart and soul into for so long, and the group of people that you've really identified and what you've done as a habit for 4 years, right? It doesn't feel good. So I think there's definitely a range of emotions. I think for me, leading up to that time, it was really challenging, right? I'm a full-time working mom. My husband works full-time. Our kids were home. We are very lucky. We have a lot of family help, but it was still a mess trying to juggle, as so many marketers are going through right now. We basically took our entire marketing plan and threw it in the trash and had to repivot and redo all of our plans. So ton of work going on around that. A ton of work going on around, working with our new ownership and positioning and communicating with customers about the change of ownership. So, I was working crazy hours, trying to balance home. So part of me was wow, take a deep breath. It was good timing for our family, because I don't know how much longer I would have lasted in that situation. But
sure.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it sucks to feel you're moving on and something that you've, put so much into for such a long time is coming to an end. It's really mixed feelings.
Yeah. I remember texting you all while we were working from home and I was still employed, just trying to keep the kids busy. What were we sending? It was the Pokemon yoga video on YouTube. We were sending back to get the kids to here you go do this, get some exercise in while we're both trying to work and get into meetings. That whole process was insane. Never mind being in a pandemic, then finding out you're out of work. It's such a whirlwind. And you know what? I know we just jumped right back into this, but because who knows who's watching this if they're coming into part 2, but this is Business Over Brews, and I need to top this off here. And so again, like I mentioned before, I am sitting with a nice Oktoberfest, because the first beers I was able to legally drink, with my birthday being in October. Always been a personal favorite. Do you mind introducing what it is you're drinking again? Are you on to beer too, or I think it was a pretty heavy hitter? You might want, I don't know if you're coasting that through the entire episode here.
I'm a little bit of a lightweight, as I mentioned earlier. I've been more into the coffee brews than the beer brews lately. So I stole one of my husband's night shifts at a fridge. Would highly recommend, though. I love beer. I don't drink it enough, honestly.
That's one thing I learned with the pandemic. I've found a brand new love for alcohol. That's how it works though, right? Isn't it? Catastrophe hits and you drink the pain away. Don't follow that advice. That is not advice I want to give on this channel.
I hit it strong and now I'm like over it and I don't drink anymore.
That's it. First month, March, April was tough. And then that's it. Now it's all back out to working, back out to eating healthy, all this stuff. But, which is good. It's good to work to be a better self. But back to finding work in the middle of a pandemic. So you have this idea, you have this feeling, there's a purchase coming. You can get this feeling that things are going to change and you might not be on the boat going forward. How do you prepare for that exit? A lot of times people, for example, my layoff came I was very surprised. I was told that morning, and I had insurance until that evening, and that was it. With the opportunity, I've always looked at making sure you're prepared just in case things happen. But what was your exit like? What was the first thing you figured to do? How do you prepare your legacy that you've made there in a way that you can show and sell to other future employers?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I would highly suggest something I've tried to do along, and I don't know if I've done as good as I would like to say I have, but do not wait till you are in that position to build your resume and your portfolio and that legacy, right? I try to suggest, and I do this, and not as much as I would like, but like keep a Google Doc with like your accomplishments and comments from your supervisors and documents of things that you have created that you're really proud of. Like, I've been lucky to take some really long runs in my career. I spent 7 years at Click Software and 4 years at Time Trade. So my resume went some really long periods before it was updated. And when you go that long, without updating your resume, it's like really painful to try and recap 4 years, right? So don't wait, because you're not going to remember some of the cool things that you did. And when you find yourself like instantly out of a job, you just don't have access to all the things that you need to like effectively tell that story. So I highly recommend like creating a Google Doc where you can just throw that stuff in there. Like the Google Drive, where you can save all whatever you want to use, like not plugging Google here, but wherever you want to save some of the work that you're proud of. Because even if you're not updating your resume on a regular basis, it's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier when you're in that situation.
No, of course. I mean, I remember when, when we were working at Time Trade, I developed that a site, an internal site. Sales Center was an internal wiki just for the sales team to get product information, sales training, any competitive analysis. And that's something that I can't take. It's an internal website. It's a whole website. There's something you can't take. But I do remember at least capturing screenshots of that so I can use it as an example. And keep in mind, to your point, you can't take, proprietary information. You can't take, company knowledge that you're looking to exploit or share with other folks. It's just showcasing the work that you had done. But you've got to get creative on the way to pull those portfolio items out that you can't just take clean copies of and walk away with. And so, like you said, updating that resume.
For marketers, a lot of what we do is public facing, right? So some of those like data sheets and collateral, like you can take that and you can be proud of like what we've sent out. So I would say that's a benefit to being in marketing, I guess.
Yeah, as opposed to finance. Again, sorry, Sean. Exactly. I apologize. But so, all right, you either anticipate or you've prepared. The thing is, if you haven't prepared, the best recommendation I can give you is to try and scour either the website or any place you have published assets that are publicly available if you can't get to your computer anymore, if your computer's been locked remotely. And again, it's not about trying to do something malicious. It's just making sure that you keep a copy of the assets that you've created that you can use in your portfolio going forward. But so you're out of work, you've consolidated some items. What do you do for your approach? Are you panicked? Are you trying, not to say you're panicked, but do you just try and find and land an opportunity as fast as possible? Are you, with the shotgun approach, are you trying to be very targeted moving forward into these opportunities? And again, keep in mind, these opportunities are, again, very highly coveted. There's a lot of people out of work, so you're going up against a lot of other people. What was the approach like for you to find the next gig for you?
So I think, obviously you have to do what's right for you and your financial situation. But, for me, I had the privilege of, like I said, we were kind of in pandemic, right? My kids are home. We're not paying for daycare and so many other things. First thing I did was, take a breath, right? I've been working a long time without, a real break. And for me, taking that breath was, really important. Something that I personally needed to recharge and going in fresh. Now, when I dreamed of my time off, taking this breath, I was home without kids and was checking a million things off my personal to-do list, running a marathon and everything else that everyone dreamed that they were going to become in quarantine. In reality, I got to spend some amazing time with my two children, and I had to learn to give myself some grace on how not to accomplish anything in a day and actually maybe go backwards in terms of my house looking like a bomb went off. So I feel like it was, very developmentally interesting time for me. So, first thing I did was kind of take that breath and really think about what I wanted to do, because I think you kind of need that clarity. That being said, I would say I probably didn't have full clarity by the time I started getting out there and interviewing. And for me, finding that clarity was getting out there and talking to companies and learning about positions and kind of identifying through that process, what I did and did not want, right? I talked to some companies where it was very clear to me, this is not a good fit. That's not where I see myself. And other companies are wow, I really feel like I could make an impact here. So, for me, I kind of went through that as I was interviewing at different companies and starting to fine tune what really felt right. I would say if you have the opportunity, do not jump into something, really be choosy about what you want.
Yeah.
So I've transitioned out of companies twice now without my next role lined up right after. And I will tell you, while it was super scary in both of those times, I ended up in a much better place than I was each of those times. So sometimes, a tough situation ends up in a blessing. And I think also right now, people that are searching for jobs, give yourself a little leeway, right? We're in a pandemic. I would say I had that panic moment for a little while. I was wow, it's been 3 months and I don't have another job. In a normal job market, I would look at some of those resumes and ask them questions, but we're not in a normal job market. And, if you're taking some time to spend with your family and do what's necessary, because so many of us are in difficult situations at school and daycare and all these things, don't stress it, because these are not normal times.
It's true.
So I would say if you have the opportunity, be a little bit choosy and really look for the right fit for you.
Nice. And so that's when I first got let go. I will say I took a shotgun approach. I panicked. I was the insurance carrier. We're expecting a kid in less than 3 weeks. So once things settled down, that's when I finally took the breath like you had taken and focused my approach on what I was going to apply for. Now, I'd love to know from you, going through the interview process, do you have any recommendations? How do you put your best foot forward? How do you stand out when interviewing? Everyone's interviewing remotely now. Is it all about making sure that the camera has great lighting, that the background isn't distracting? What would you recommend to do to someone now looking for work, especially if they have to do all these applications virtually and interviews virtually?
So I guess I don't know if I'm an expert in this area, as I've actually never really interviewed necessarily remotely. I did get the job, I guess, but usually I give my advice as a hiring manager, and I haven't actually been a hiring manager yet in this situation. But but I would say maybe some tips on like how to get the interview. I think like a lot of people, I did as well, like you first, like are at work and you like panic and you start applying online for just like a million jobs, right? I would say of all the interviews that I did and the companies that I talked to, maybe like 2 came from online applications. The majority of those I felt like went in a black hole. So for me, the most successful tactics to getting in the door and actually getting that interview was like leveraging personal connections, reaching out on LinkedIn to mutual connections to make those referrals. I'm a member of several like different networking groups, Revenue Collective being one that I would highly recommend, which is like a paid membership group. But having those connections, I felt like was like absolutely, especially at the executive level, the best way in, and the interviews that I felt, the jobs that I felt like were best matched to me and you know, ultimately leaded to me landing a role. I think back to your original question, interviewing remotely is like really weird. I think I just saw something online like, what do you wear to a remote interview? Like, do you wear a suit in your house? Like, it's so awkward, right? Like,
I know.
What do you wear? Like
suit, jacket, sweatpants, right? That's how you do it.
Yeah. It's like and especially in like tech now, I feel like I guess you don't really necessarily even wear a full suit generally anyway. So,
yeah.
I mean, I would say try and keep the level of professionalism that you would in the office, you know, dress business, look presentable, you know, I think everyone's understanding that people are in different circumstances and like have different environments that they're in, but you need to be in an undistracted environment, quiet, and really try to make sure that you can really dedicate and focus your time to the person you're talking to. Because if you're in a place of distractions, it's just not going to work.
I've had a couple of interviews. I'd say out of all the interviews I've had, of which applying to jobs from April up until August, I didn't hear back from anybody. It was dead. As soon as August hit, I was flooded with interviews. But I'd have to say, half of those interviews, I had to actually because I'm at home alone watching my son. I had to bring my son into those interviews, whether he woke up during the interview, if I tried to get him down, or if he wouldn't cooperate. But I'll be honest, every interview I've been in that I had to bring him into, they were very, very understanding and respectful. And but it is so distracting, to your point, you know, to have to try and do all of those things at once, especially if you're home alone. But so my son has been just like he makes in this channel, he's been making appearances for my job interview. So I'd say he helps, but I haven't been hired yet.
At the same time, I feel like it's like good going into that with like full transparency, like a company that's like understanding of that through the interview process is going to be more understanding of what you're going through personally, like in the work-life balance. So, you know, it is good to go into it with like full transparency, but.
Sure. So one of the questions I wanted to ask, and you sort of answered it, but I don't know if you can answer it for yourself. It's hard to answer as advice for other people, but it's how do you choose the right opportunity? And that's a question that can be asked whether it's a pandemic or not. But for you, what were you looking for to make sure you had the right opportunity? And what do you recommend others look for to make sure that they're finding the right opportunity for them?
So for me, I look for like 3 major things. One, is this like a product that I'm excited about and that I think is going to be successful, right? Like if I am looking at it and it's like just not something that like gets me excited and I can't understand who's going to buy it or why they would want to buy it. Like as a marketer, you like need to drink the Kool-Aid, right? You need to like get up and believe in it and love it. So, you know, make sure it's something you're excited about and passionate about. 2, really like get a good feel of the people. In some of the most like my favorite roles, I've gotten the opportunity not just to like interview with like who would be my bosses and the people above me, but also getting an opportunity to meet the team that, would ultimately work for me and be a part of like my success. For me, that gave me like a really good feel of the culture and was something like, these are the people you are in the trenches with and you are going to have to spend probably more time with than you do with your actual family. So you want to feel like you like these people and they're people that you can like enjoy spending time with.
Sure.
All of it right now, like via Zoom. And then I would say that the third thing is like, I look for a job that I think will challenge me, yet I know I can be successful, right? So like for me, it's like finding something that's a bit of a stretch, something of a new challenge, yet I still feel like it's in my wheelhouse and I can bring value to, right? Like if I feel like a company is like totally hitting it out of the park and like all the areas I know I can bring value, like how much success am I going to have at that organization? How much value can I bring to that role? You don't want to go into a company that's like totally perfect. You want to like also identify weaknesses and identify areas that you can bring value, because it's ultimately going to make you successful and help you provide value and challenge you. So those are kind of the three major things that I tend to look for in a new role that have really worked out well for me.
It's funny. It makes me think like, not to bring the office into this, but to find a position that, or a job for a company that you're interested in, like how do people work for paper companies, or how do people work for automotive oil companies? Like, I feel like they have to be the most boring job. Like, I digress. I can't get into that. So a couple of great pointers on choosing the right opportunity. Again, it is something that each individual needs to find something that they're passionate about to see if it is the right opportunity for them. You can't just say what's the right opportunity for a global base. But next, you found the right opportunity. You decided to join the company. And now what's it like to onboard remotely? What's it like to onboard where you don't physically meet people? You're just all on Zoom.
Honestly, it was a lot better than I thought it would be.
Nice.
Good. I think one thing that helps, and I've had advice from like previous mentors before too, is like, it's really hard to join a company when you're the only remote person. When everyone is remote, you're kind of all in the same boat. At HQ, we kind of have a camera always on policy. So,
nice.
It's pretty surprising how you just kind of like it feels like you really get to know people. We actually had the opportunity to meet as a team last week. So I'm like a month and a half in, and it was the first time I actually got to meet my team face to face. And it was really interesting to see. We went out for like a socially distanced drink after work. And nice. I think like 50% of my team started during the pandemic. So they actually have not met face to face yet. Wow. Like the, joking and like you can see how people have like gotten to know one another. It's pretty amazing how people have pulled through. And, I would say the company's been great in terms of like having resources, and like we're using like all Google stuff. So it's so awesome for collaboration and just like using like Live, and Google Hangouts is automatically thrown into every single one of our meetings. So the camera just turns on and you just kind of get used to it. You can't replicate the office environment and getting together. And I look forward to that, getting back to that for sure. But, I would say onboarding remotely has been much better than I anticipated.
That's awesome. And so, again, you've just started this position. Onboarding remotely is difficult enough. What is your first 90 days looking like? I mean, first, of course, you need to try and build those relationships that you'd expect to have as a manager to your employees, and then the relationships you have across different departments for the people that you're delivering to. But what is it like for what's your goals for the first 90?
So I think coming in, like one of the things I've learned is like you really need to kind of like take some time before you like jump in and start making changes to really like assess and figure out what's going on, both procedurally, what the team is focusing on, what does the company need, what are the skills of your team and people. So, it's hard to do when you want to like come in and like make an impact out of the gate. But I think I recommend like taking a breath and like learning as much as you can going in there, because it's just going to like give you more credibility with your team, help them buy in with, you know, how you're moving forward and making decisions, because you're not just like jumping in and pretending you know better than them. You don't, right? They've been there, they've been living it. You can't, you know, even if you're the smartest person, there's reason things have been done the way they've been done for so long. Doesn't mean they're the right reasons and it's the right thing to keep forever, but you need to understand that and kind of understand more about the team that you're working with and what's happened there. So I think really learning as much as you can going into it, and building rapport with your team is the most important thing. And, you know, cross-functioning your peers, your boss, everyone, and then start to come in and work with your team to like make the changes that you see important and get to that next step.
Lauren, I can't thank you enough for being my first guest. I can't thank you enough for enabling me to be able to produce this from the comfort of my own home. Thank you so much for joining our first episode of Business Over Brews. It was absolutely fantastic to talk to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Cheers.
And if you haven't subscribed yet, cheers. You better be subscribing and you better like the video or I'm going to find you. I won't. It's a pandemic. I won't come to your house. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers, guys. This episode is sponsored by me. I sponsored this episode because I paid for everything. I paid for that lamp. I paid for that camera. I paid for that tripod. I paid for this fill light. I paid for this laptop. I paid for this microphone. You know, I might have actually stolen the microphone. Every penny I save goes into this channel. All right, why is every light on in this house? We're not made of money here, people. So please, help me out and subscribe to the channel. 71, not a chance. Look, every facet of this channel is financed through my own pocket. So every subscribe, like, and comment, I personally appreciate. And I will reply to. So please subscribe and help me out. Appreciate it. Listen, people, we are not made of money. If you are cold, put on a sweater.